seconds. So we'll start with District 1, downtown Anchorage. SJ, are you online?
Yep, I am. Good to see you, Matt, or hear you.
Perfect. Good to hear you and good to see you too. District 2 is myself. I'm present. District 3, West Anchorage. We still have that seat as vacant. District 4, Midtown Anchorage. Oh. And just to remind everyone, if you don't have anything to say, and Chris, I'm hearing an echo. If you don't have anything to say, please make sure you're muted. And I am using my phone. So I would ask Christine, if you see anybody with their hand raised, please let me know.
Okay, I will do that.
District 4, Midtown Anchorage. Diana?
It's still muted if you're speaking, Diana.
So we'll keep going. District 5, East Anchorage. Mike?
Present.
Perfect. District 6, South Anchorage. Nancy? Nancy Pease?
Yes, present.
Thank you. Anchorage Chamber of Commerce. Kathleen?
Here, good morning.
Good morning. Then we have Chugach Eagle River Chamber of Commerce. Chuck Homan?
Present.
Thank you. Federation Community Council's representative. Bob French?
Bob French is here. Thank you.
Thank you. And then our representative from Planning and Zoning, Jim Winchester.
Here.
And our representative from the Joint Base, Elmendorf Richardson, Cor Anderson, sorry, my apologies. Perfect. So we've established a quorum. And so bear with me. So I'll be honest, full disclosure, I was actually driving in to our normal room. I'm glad Christine had sent a reminder. So I flipped around and came back here, but I'm using my phone for this. So with that, I'll read I did forget to read our public announcement. No, it is number 2, our public announcement comment. So welcome to AMAT's, oh, that's not right. So welcome to AMAT's CAC meeting. Public comments are welcome and encouraged with 3 minutes given to each speaker. After the committee discusses each item, members of the public will be invited to comment. Housekeeping item, for virtual attendance, please keep your camera off unless speaking. For those attending by phone, please press 6 to mute or unmute yourself. Any questions?
That will be *6 to mute and unmute.
Thank you. And with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
And just because, perfect. You took the words out of my mouth. Can I get a second?
Rayberg seconds.
I might have had a pause right there. Can I get a second, or did I already get a second?
Mike
Yeah,
Rayberg
Mike
is
Rayberg.
pleased to second.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike. Are there any objections to or any discussion about the agenda? Hearing no discussion, are there any objections to approving the agenda as is? Hearing no objections, the agenda is approved. We'll move to item 4, approval of meeting minutes, February 28th. Can I get a motion to approve the February 28th minutes?
Bob French, move to approve.
Thank you, Bob. Can I get a second?
Tor Anderson seconds.
Thank you. Do we have any comments, corrections?
Could I ask you to scroll down the meeting minutes?
Sure.
I think there was one correction that I suggested when you sent out the draft. Just wanted to make sure it made it into
Yep, I believe I captured yours.
Okay, thank you. Yep, we're good.
Perfect. Any other corrections? Hearing no corrections, are there any objections? Hearing no objections, the minutes are approved, and we'll move to item 5, action items. So first, we have our memo of the 2025 AMATS Public Participation Plan. Thank you for sharing that with us, Christine. We tried, at least I can just speak personally, I definitely tried to disseminate that. I hopefully got some good participation. And with that, I'd pass it to staff. If there was, what was the format? Were we planning to adopt comments?
Yeah, it's during an open public comment period on this plan. Comments will close, the comment period will close on May 16th. So this is an opportunity if the committee as a whole wants to make any comments that we would bring before TAC and PC for approval. Also, just to help spread the word that this comment period is out. I could do a short presentation that
We
I
had a
did at
sub-
both the TAC and PC if folks would like to see that. I'm not sure how many members of the public we have on right now, but if any of the committee members would like me to kind of go over what changed, I'm happy to do that. Otherwise, we can discuss comments if folks have brought them here today.
This is Nancy. I'd just as soon go ahead and discuss the comments we've brought, assuming we've all read it.
So question on process here, though. In the past, we've submitted our comments in advance, and the comments were sent out to all committee members, and then we went over by line item because we could research. Are we no longer doing that? Is it more just fly by, bring the comments to the meeting and just adopt them there?
Yeah, I mean, we could do it either way. It takes more time to do it that way. If I think we've done that in the past when it's the major MTP or the first tip, the first MTP, where there might be a lot of technical comments that each committee member would like to review. I didn't think about doing that with this plan since it's just kind of an overall what is AMATS and this is how to get involved. I figured comments that were brought from the committee members today could easily be decided whether they're agreed upon or not.
So I guess it'd be nice to hear committee members of what their thoughts is. And Mike, and I saw your hand. But I guess my point, and I know it is additional labor with staff, but when we know the comments that are being brought forward, just like any community council or any other body, we have a better thorough discussion as we can research those comments. If we have any opinions or any positions about them, instead of it introduced at the same meeting as the comment would be adopted. So that's my thought, but I would like to hear, maybe it doesn't matter and maybe it doesn't need to be. But with that, Mike, you had your hand raised?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. May I ask a question through the chair about some of the changes that might be happening?
Absolutely.
Okay. My question for this is, I looked through the redlining of the various executive orders and such that were the basis for the planning process before. Does this mean that like the current MTP is going to have to be modified because all the metrics have been changed? Or does it mean there's going to be a whole new set of metrics for the next cycle? I hope that question makes sense because I know a lot of this had a lot of scoring that may not be relevant anymore.
Sure. As far as we know right now, the executive orders have changed, so that's why we redlined them in the Title VI plan, but no laws have changed. When the next transportation bill gets ready to be to come forth, that's probably when we'll see any changes that would directly affect how AMATS plans in the area. But at this point, we haven't changed any of our processes. But Aaron can speak more on that if you would like.
I'm good. You covered it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the
Thank you.
clarification on what it means. Appreciate it.
Do we, so I guess we have comments on this document, but also how we comment. I would like to hear some feedback. Nancy?
Yes, I think with something that's highly technical, it probably benefits people to look at potential new wording ahead of time. For me, that requires a much greater level of effort to submit it and to put it into the exact technical language a week ahead of time. And then, several other people are doing the same thing. It's a lot of effort, extra effort, which may not come to fruition at all based on the committee's discussion. So for something like this, where there isn't really a huge legal or fiscal issue involved, we're not bound to ensure that we're helping AMATS to fiscally constrain its budget or anything like that. I hope that we can just come and discuss our ideas and then come away with some comments. And we have time at this instance, at least, to review a draft of what we pass before the May 16th deadline.
Thank you, Nancy. Do we have any additional thoughts of, and I like what you're saying right there, is maybe we evaluate the level of technicality on it and we upfront, either this is a low line technicality that we can bring our comments here, or if it's with something more formal, MTP, tip amendments, that we formalize our comments so that we're aware of the changes beforehand. Mike, did you have your hand up?
Second.
Nancy, your hand's still up unless you have a,
Bob has his hand up.
Bob?
Yeah, I would basically just echo what Nancy has says. I think there are times when it's definitely appropriate to have the suggestions ahead of time, and others where I think we could go with a more streamlined process.
Perfect. Thank you, Bob. Do we have any other comments?
This is Nancy again. I'll just chime in. When we do have an issue that we feel is, highly technical or political or just very controversial, I guess I should say, it'd be helpful to have a reminder from our coordinator that, the comments are due for dissemination to the committee 1 week prior or whatever the lead-in time is.
No, that's a really good point. We've had some very last minute ones that have had quite a bit of discussion, setting expectations of when comments would be submitted with any of the technical documents. No, that's great, Nancy. So I'm trying to see. Michael, do you still have your hand up?
No, I mean, just a general impression of the plan, but I don't have a comment on our process.
Okay, so I think where we'll leave it at, unless the new chair wishes to do a different way, is we'll just make a point of that this is a bring your comments to the meeting, or if this is more of a technical format, and we'll set expectations of submitting comments in advance. Does that sound reasonable? Are there any objections with that plan? Okay, hearing none, we'll do it that way moving forward. And with that, now specific to the document that we have ahead of us. Mike?
Yeah, it's just I appreciated that this is where you would go to get a more in-depth of this understanding. Besides someone perusing the website, and it seems like something that we would hand to a prospective committee member, since we're trying to recruit. It really gives a good synopsis of what the point is, and how we try to communicate, how the staff try to communicate. It's a general impression of what it is, what it's doing.
So I guess I had a question for staff. With the public participation plan, it could also uncover how committee seats are filled. And I know Aaron will jump in if I
The committee seats are usually in the committee bylaws that is discussed. This document gives an overall of AMATs, what our main directives are from federal transportation planning and how to get involved. And then any sub-plan would use this plan as the basis when they write their more tailored public involvement plan for that particular planning process.
So I guess I'll just say what my and it was kind of a fringe. It was on the edge, but so part of the public participation is the committee seats that are filled, and we have different representatives from different portions of across Anchorage. I think that's great. As community councils are one of the foundational groups of these different areas, it would be nice to have a more direct correlation with the community councils to elected representatives, similar to, for example, Federation Community Councils. There's a elected seat by that body as they're representing that group right there. So that was the
Sure,
only real.
Your comment is that the FCC should elect the 6 district seats on this committee?
No, I was using FCC. I would like the community councils from the adjacent areas. Like if I am representing Chugiak Eagle River, I would like for those associated community councils to select the representative of that area instead of the policy committee selecting an individual.
Hey, Matt.
I mean, of course, they need to be ratified.
About that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I had a question about that, Matt. I mean, two thoughts. One, not all like assembly districts match community council boundaries either. And so would there be for instance, District 1 has a couple of boundary lines that cross and share borders with a couple of community councils, so there would be community councils deciding on 2 different districts, or what are you thinking there?
No, that's a really good question, and I don't have the solution for it. I just know that be it the Chamber of Commerce, be it Federation Community Councils, be it Planning and Zoning, those bodies are selecting the representation, whereas right now, there is a recommendation of someone that is in a particular area, and they might be a good representative. I would just like to tie some kind of selection process for the people that are representing different geographical boundaries. I don't know the answer. You bring up a good question right there. Maybe each community council selects a nomination of they would like this person to be considered, and then the policy committee vets those candidates and they select the person that they would like.
One comment I have that, it's a little, this is Diana, it's a little bit different in which area you are. Matt, I think you probably only have 1 or 2 councils out in Eagle River, and I think I cover like 7 or 8. So trying to come up with, and it's a little difficult in areas where there are, a pretty high number of councils within it to get their attention. There's different meeting schedules. Some people meet at the beginning of the month and middle and end, and it would be pretty a lot more complicated doing it in an area like District 4 than it would be for the district that you represent.
So Eklutna, Chugiak, Birchwood, Eagle River Valley, South Fork, Eagle River. Those are my community councils that I represent. We have around 6 of them. Similar issue.
Okay, I
Um,
didn't realize, on the surface, it seemed like you were more compact, but I guess I'm wrong.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of representation out there. And I don't, I mean, I guess this is a really good conversation because it makes me think about what would that process look like. I would imagine maybe there's a vacancy and those community councils are notified that there's a vacancy. And by this deadline, if they have, the community council selects someone that they would like to be nominated for a representative, submitted to the TAC, or I don't know, it'd be TAC or policy. And then by that deadline, any of the community councils that wished to participate, and I would imagine that not all of them would. So I would imagine, just like with Chugiak Eagle River, we might only get 2 different candidates. And without getting into too heavy of a a selection process, that community council selects a representative, sends it to policy committee. Let's say there's 2, and the policy committee picks someone for the representation. But I guess really what I was trying to tie is that the people, the participation is, there's some type of selection. It's not just, well, this person has, just to give a little bit more backbone to the selection process. Nancy?
Yeah, I like the idea of community councils nominating potential candidates. I also would like to just float out there the question of how district representatives liaise with their community councils, because that's something I'm still trying to figure out. Some of my community councils only meet 6 months a year, 6 times a year, and we meet at a certain schedule. And would like to know if there has been any sort of formal practice or informal practice. This is a separate question, but to double back, I like the idea of community councils nominating representatives. Not sure if having community councils elect representatives is necessary, but nominating and then, the policy committee selecting would be a good way to go, I think.
And it sounds like this is kind of more of a bylaws topic, so maybe we should think about this and put it on our next meeting for with some proposals on the table or something.
We still have Mike and Aaron with their hands up.
Nancy covered it. Aaron, please.
Okay.
Aaron?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to mention this is a bylaws discussion, so you should probably move on and have this at another meeting. We're talking about the public participation plan on this item. And additionally, one of the things that we were trying to capture by having assembly districts is to give a little more broad range of people who can participate. Because your recommendation is only for members who participate on the community council. Not everybody participates in their community council within our community. So you kind of hem in who can represent on the community advisory committee if it's limited to just the community council itself. But something to think about, and definitely should bring this up at the next meeting as part of a bylaw discussion. Thank you.
Yep. No, I think that's great. I think let's get this on the next agenda. That sounds like a great plan. And I think just really serving to the point of right now, there is not a selection process other than a single person of interest, and that staff recommends that person. So I think some process would be much better, but I think anyone interested definitely could participate through the community council. Okay, so moving back to, are there any other comments on the plan? Nancy?
Yes, I have several comments. So stop me if someone else wants to jump in. but just sort of going through chronologically. On page 6, this is AMATs. I think this should be as comprehensive a one-page glance as possible. And I would like to request or suggest that 2 more pieces of information be embedded here. That is in the second paragraph. It says areas of the country, balanced transportation goals. I think I would like to say that federal law requires it and cite the federal law so that we cover not only the people who are very kind of low information, but the people who are coming for precise answers should be able to get what they need on this page too, as much as possible. So I'd like to cite that. And then the other piece, more specific information I'd like to see on this page is down at the next to last paragraph, which begins, once research is complete, projects are proposed. And I think this is where the public is likely to want to get involved. And that's passive, and it's not, I think it should be clear on this page who gets to propose these projects. Because if a person is coming with an intent to take some specific action, I think they should have that information in a really quick glance.
Are there any
Or at least
objections
there
to
could-
adopt? Go ahead, Nancy.
Oh,
I was just going to adopt your comments once
I
you.
know it's complicated. It's complicated to say. It may be more than one sentence to say how projects are proposed, but there could be a reference on this page that says project are proposed. The process for project proposals is on page such and such, because I know people coming first with ready to take action would want that information.
Are there any objections to approving all of Nancy's comments? Hearing no objections, the comments are adopted by the committee.
Okay, the next comment I have, if no one else is ready to jump in, this is more of a question. Page 7 is a chart, and normally when you have an acronym, you then spell it out right away, and the columns are reversed here. I didn't know if anyone else found that elucidating or confusing, to have a column that says type. And I know we're trying to be very friendly for laypersons. So one idea I had was you have the acronym in the first column, then you spell it out in the second column, and then instead of type, you say something like, what is it? Or what does it do? And put that elucidating information in the third column.
And Nancy, before you talk, I'll just jump in there. I think it's a good point. I think my reason for that column was just, I still want to show the acronyms, but I also, when you get to plans and programs, we're trying to, talk about the MTP as a transportation plan, the TIP as the funding program, and the UPWP is the work, it should say program. Just so that how those relate to the STIP, just to kind of, yes, we'll use those acronyms when we're technically talking to our partners. And so if anybody already knows them as that, they're there. But moving forward, when we talk about those things with the general public, we kind of want to get in the habit of using those for. So it's almost, and so then I just wanted to make sure you knew whether it's a state or a local or AMAT's acronym. But I'm happy to change that. However, if it's not intuitive, let's definitely change that.
Nancy, are you still holding your comment with creating a separate row to define how the acronym structure is?
Well, I guess I was posing it more as a question to see if other people had opinions. I'm not super, yeah, I guess, yeah.
No, I think you're actually right, Nancy, to some, it's when I start saying MTP, TIP, MPO, you lose engagement significantly. And maybe that's, I don't know, I guess there is value, I think, for people understanding what the acronyms do mean behind it. Chuck?
I agree with staff. I like it the way it is because sometimes you kind of forget what STIP and TIP and the type of program. I like it the way it is.
Thank you, Chuck.
Okay, I have no, I'm not, yeah, as I said, I just was looking for discussion, and it doesn't sound as if, it sounds as if the staff has a reason and willing to, if I understand staff, they're planning to use the generic language when they talk. I'm not sure if that's the intent, that we're going to try to talk about the funding program and not the TIP. Is that the intent?
That is the intent, yes.
Okay, well, if that's the intent, then I guess I could see the reason for this table. So I would move ahead without making a request to change anything there. On page 9, well, that's kind of minor. I can, never mind. It's the first instance of safe harbor, and safe harbor hasn't been defined anywhere, but it's defined later in the plan. So I'm just pointing that out to staff for their consideration. But on page 10, I thought a little discussion was warranted. This is where I specifically wanted to focus on the idea of targets, expected progress. How will we know if we succeed? And the goal, again, is engage diverse audiences. So I was looking for targets that come back and measure whether we engaged diverse audiences. And the targets here are to establish baseline data, and that doesn't get to analysis. So, and then there's also a target of, did we offer an incentive? But again, that's not the point. It's not to give stuff away, cookies or childcare, whatever. It's, did we get diverse audiences? So I wanted to suggest that this target column actually have something that's expected, measures expected progress toward diversity. And there's one other point on this page. With number 3, target outreach to underserved areas, the measure in the second column there is the number of individuals sent outreach materials. And I wondered about that because I wanted to know if there is evidence that that is a best practice, is outreach materials sent to individuals. The reason I say that is AMATS is pretty Byzantine and complex. And for people who haven't dived in, just getting outreach materials as an individual, I'm not sure that's compelling them to participate. And I wondered if there's evidence that maybe reaching grass tops leaders, that's a term which means sort of the heads of small community groups, might be a more effective outreach. Like if you've got a Lions Club or you've got a Filipino American Club or something like that, and you reach out to them, you've already got people gathered and a commitment to work together and work on the community. And I think that's where outreach might be more effective than just mailers to individual mailboxes.
Chuck?
Yeah, that line 3, the outreach to underserved areas. I guess I'm asking, what is the definition of an underserved area? To me, areas in the AMAT's area that is underserved is the more rural areas. The higher density areas, AMAT's targets and spends more money, dollars in those areas. But then over in column 3, it's talking about underrepresented areas. Underrepresented areas to me is a separate issue than underserved areas. So I think there's a disconnect between column 1 and column 3 there. And did they mean in column 1 underrepresented areas?
Does staff want to clarify that? This is Nancy.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, I was trying to look up our definition of those two. I mean, we have them identified in our MTP. I've left the language as is. But when reviewing this plan, just getting ready for changes that may come, thinking of engaging more people. So just engaging new groups that we haven't engaged before. The underserved and underrepresented are both deal with socioeconomic considerations, people that have been left behind, low income, minority populations, and things like that. If those particular parameters come out of our planning abilities, moving forward, it would just be getting more people in the process of AMETs, and so that we hear from a broader scope of the community than just who we typically hear from, who already knows about us and already participates in the process. I'm happy to change this language now the way you suggest, or in committee wants to make. If it doesn't make sense as it is, we can adjust it now with the particular definitions that already exist.
Diana? You're muted, Diana. Or I don't know that you are. I just can't hear you.
Sorry. Yeah, I was thinking, I mean, we should at least have the same word in each column. It's confusing to use underserved in one column and underrepresented in the others, to me.
Yeah, this is Nancy. I agree with that. And is I assume underrepresented is defined somewhere.
Yes,
I think that's what we're talking about.
I don't know if I define it in that plan. I'm looking up in how we define it in the MTP. So
MTP, that's what I was thinking exactly. Yeah.
like I will I can add that same particular definition to this plan as well. Underrepresented groups are groups often including vulnerable populations that face challenges engaging with the transportation process. And underserved are groups, neighborhoods, or populations often including vulnerable populations that have additional barriers to access, which may include economic and geographic barriers. So not as particular as I was remembering.
Chuck?
Yeah, so you said geographic areas, which under that definition, but then your target, you aren't including the geographic areas. So I just, whether, if the goal is to this mainly the social economic, then that, but yeah, anyways, your definition there of geographic areas is kind of what I thought underserved areas, or it means to me, just without the, anyways. Okay, so, but I don't know if you want to add geographic areas. I don't think that's the goal of the diverse audience. I don't know if that's what the goal there is, but I'll leave it at that.
So I'm assuming this was underserved communities defined by the last census, those zones that were defined. I mean, is that what really the goal was? Those specific areas found in those areas?
The goal is just to get more diverse, a broader scope of participation in the plan. I don't think there's an intent that I use both of those words, but we would always define them the way we did in the MTP. If we're going to use a definition in this plan as well.
Nancy?
This is Nancy. Aside from the use of the term underrepresented or underserved, I'm not sure where we're arriving there, but there are a couple of specific other changes I'd like to suggest. And that is in the number 3 in the middle column, rather than number of individuals sent outreach materials, again, numbers of individuals and local leaders sent outreach materials, or community leaders. I would like to suggest that. And then on the targets, again, going down to the bottom of the page, the question is, how will we know if we succeeded? And to me, the several entries here do not tell us whether we've succeeded in diversity. And so I'd like to ask staff to rework this column a little bit. And where we're going to establish baseline data to advance, I think I'd at least like to say establish baseline data to advance toward broad participation that mirrors the community.
Are there any objections with that comment? Go ahead, Nancy, if you got anything more.
Well, another measure of success on all of these would be whether the projects receive comments and participation. So rather than just sending out messages, to me, expected progress, how we know if we succeeded is, did we get feedback from diverse parts of the community and directly affected parts of the community?
So clarification, Nancy, you wanted to change the level of engagement from not just a bulk quantity, but to specific community or organization, community leaders is the terminology used. Is that correct?
Yep. Right.
Okay, there's one. So let's just, are there any objections to that?
You have Diana with her hand up.
Diana?
That was from a while ago. I was wondering, like on the underserved, underrepresented, just put both the words in both occurrences, underserved / underrepresented, in the first column and the third column.
So we have 3 suggestions that are on the floor right now, just to break them up. And Diana, your comment, totally hear that. So I'm just gonna step back to Nancy. You had 2 specific actionable items. Just make sure we're all on board with those. One was changing those to
3.
Okay, and you'll throw them the other one. So community leaders was one. Are there any objections to adopting that as a committee?
You have
Okay.
some hands up that have been sitting there for a little bit.
Who is it? Robert?
I think Ann was actually up first, but so I'll defer to her.
Bob, yeah.
Thank you. I was going to just recommend what Diana just recommended, that item number 3 read target outreach to underserved areas and underrepresented individuals.
Perfect.
sorry, just as a clarification, it's only committee members who are speaking now. The public will have
Oh,
an
I'm sorry.
opportunity to speak at a later date. So if you're a member of the public, please just hold off until we get to that point. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the clarification, Erin.
Okay, this is
Bob?
French again. I think really one of the, looking at the targets and everything here, the next page on page 11, I think needs to be tied together more with, because that's where we're supposed to be evaluating the process. And it would, you know, come back to the, you know, the, I guess the targets and the measures, seeing whether or not we measured it and we got to those goals. So I agree with Nancy that, you know, establishing baseline data isn't really, it's part of it, but I think it's also the reporting part of that needs to be tied in there more clearly than just saying, you know, this is baseline. We definitely want to be able to measure that the community is participating, is commenting, and is, you know, we're reaching the people that are going to be affected by these projects.
Thank you, Bob. So I'm not trying to get this too much down by the numbers, but we have some specific suggestions, and I just want to make sure that those are adopted or not adopted. Christine, do you have a notes of the specific recommendations from Nancy and Diane?
Yes. And the
Can
first
you
one
read
is,
all those off? And we,
yeah, I will, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm just kind of jotting notes, but the first one she's saying is on number 3, for the measure, number of individuals sent out outreach materials, number of individuals and local leaders. So adding the
Yes.
word
Let's just
and
stop
local
it.
leaders.
So are there any objections to adopting that comment, the first one? Okay, that comment is adopted. Next, please.
And for, I think this is probably a blanket comment for anywhere that the target says establish baseline data to advance from adding the words baseline data to advance towards broad participation that mirrors the community.
Yes.
Are there any objections? Hearing no objections, the comment's adopted. And then was that Diana's? Oh, maybe actually there was one more with Nancy. I'm sorry. What was the last one?
Yeah. So for the
That-
measure, oh, sorry, how comments or participation was received, instead of just outreach material sent out, did we get comments or participation back from these groups? So that's the measure.
Community leaders.
Yes, that's the gist of it. Rather than just outreach, track, have a target, and it may require a new objective, but the target would be that AMATS receives comments or feedback from underrepresented / underserved areas on specific projects or work items.
Are there any objections to adopting that comment? Hearing none, that comment is adopted. And then we had, was that Bob and Diana had made the comment of listing both underrepresented and what was the other
Underserved.
one? But both, yes,
Underserved.
listing them both
Underserved.
together. Are there any objection to listing that as a comment? Hearing none, the comment is adopted. Okay, sorry, I wasn't trying to, I just didn't want to get too far all over the place. Bob, you were saying to tie it down to the next page. Was there a specific actionable item there that I'd missed?
I think it was more just changing the established baseline data into something that reflects that those those measures will be reported on, which is what the is called out on page 11.
So you're just making the point that a lot of it is already called out on page 11, not
Yeah,
necessarily
it's
a
just
comment to adopt.
established baseline data to me is the wrong way to say that. It should be, you know, measuring annual increases or something like that.
Is that what you'd like for the comment to be?
Yes.
So are there any objections to changing it to what was the specific verbiage that you were describing? Instead of baseline, you were looking
Measure
for
and measure biannual or annual progress of these.
Okay.
And
I'm sorry, Matt, real quick, through the chair, if I may. Robert, are you just talking about the on object number 1 now on evaluate the process, or are you talking about all of the baseline data mentions in the document?
basically all of the baseline data, because if all we do is measure that and provide a baseline, we're not. I want to have something in there that shows that the targets are being evaluated and then reported on. So really, it's on both page 10 and 11 that I think that established baseline data doesn't explain really that what we're trying to do.
Okay, so that's the item that that Nancy just made changes to as well. Christine, could you read us what, through the chair, Christine, would you mind reading us what we've already amended that to?
Sure, and just a little bit about that. This plan will be reviewed every other year, but we've never had any targets to, we've never evaluated systems, so we're trying to set up a way to evaluate it. I think my intent with established baseline data is just to find out where we are now, and then the next time we review the plan, we would have clear, okay, this is how much engagement we have now. Now we want, 5% more, 1% more, whatever, moving forward. So we can change the language as we see fit, but I just wanted to make that comment.
it's helpful.
So Nancy's, for the other, on page 10, her comment was to change, because this is about engaging diverse audiences, was to establish baseline data to advance towards broad participation that mirrors the community. So that would be changed on 3 and 4, objectives 3 and 4 that have had those targets. So establishing baseline data on evaluating the process would probably be a little different. So if you, I would like to suggest language to change that to, and probably only, in my opinion, go to this particular goal.
Yeah,
Does
I
that
guess I'm
clarify?
still kind of confused about how, to me, establishing baseline data is a one and done kind of activity, where I think that we really need to be able to look at, is this advancing and how is it advancing? And what could
So
be
Bob,
done
can
differently?
I suggest then, from what it sounds
So-
like, then maybe you're suggesting we change the language to establish baseline data to advance from, or basically establish baseline data to, oh gosh, I totally blanked out. I had an awesome thought. Establish baseline data from which to evaluate successive outreach, or what, something like that.
So let's just make sure we're raising our hands. So Tor had a comment. So
Yeah, I was
pause
just
for a
gonna
second.
say, yeah, thank you, Tor here. I was just gonna suggest, why don't we just maybe reword it to the target is to gather metrics to allow us to measure progress. That
So I'm gonna,
includes baseline
Nancy, could you pause?
and every other instance where we take a new data point.
Could you repeat that one more time, Tor? There was a lot of back noise coming in.
Sure. Yeah. So the target would be to gather metrics that allows us to measure progress or improvement.
Bob, SJ? Oh, Nancy, go ahead. You raised your hand. You're
Oh.
muted, Nancy.
You're muted, Nancy.
I think we should go beyond just having a baseline. I think in this plan, we want to commit to advancing toward, as I said before, more comments, more feedback from underrepresented and underserved in a pattern that better reflects the diversity of our community.
So is there any reason we can't do baseline / continued measuring or something? I mean, that we're just talking about the column description, correct? Okay. So Diana, you got, but I think Bob was next. Bob, Diana, in that order.
I like the measure, taking the metrics that Tor was suggesting, and I also like having, getting what Nancy's saying, that we've got the target is going to be, increasing that every year. So, and trying to make sure that it is a wider outreach. And yeah, not just wider outreach, but also just getting the community more involved overall. So it's not the same 20 people making comments on these plans.
Nancy? Oh, actually, it should have been Diana. My apologies.
So to just build on Bob's comment, it's like maybe year 1, establish baseline data. Year 2, establish targets. I mean, you can't establish targets. It would be better to establish targets once you had the baseline. So make it a 2-stage approach was my suggestion.
Nancy?
You're muted, Nancy, if you're speaking.
I think that was a great comment by Diana. What if just making a separate column to differentiate the baseline from the continued goal for whatever increased metric that is for additional participation? I thought that was a great way to separate the two out. Nancy, you still have your hand raised. We're assuming you still have a comment. Okay, we do got to keep going. Is there anyone else that has a comment on this before we? Oh, Nancy.
Not on this item. Got a couple more comments on other items.
Okay, so we've had quite a bit of discussion right there. Do we have any consensus on modifying baseline or separating a different row? There's been a couple different thoughts right here. Would anyone like to kind of? So I guess we have two different thoughts. One is to change the verbiage of baseline, and then we have another thought of to create a separate column to measure the uh, after the baselines has been established, what the metric would be. So is there, I guess, are there support or not on either one of those? Otherwise, we'll just do one comment after the other and vote one up and vote one down. Or maybe we do both. I don't know. Chuck?
I'm good the way staff has it written. So that's my comment.
Thank you.
This is Nancy. I kind of like the idea of a fourth column where we move from baseline data to establishing a target of a progress target.
Okay. Bob?
I would support either a fourth column or just changing something on the on page 11 where the evaluation of the process is taking place. I think perhaps changing some of that would be a good place to say that this does need to be reported and evaluated and see what we could do better the next year.
Thank you, Bob. To keep the meeting going right there, we have all these comments that have been, and everybody seems to have a little bit different. Are there objections to adopting all of these comments? And I know we do have some contradiction in there.
I think you could have both of them. But it's not a column, it would just be another row. Target would be 2 rows instead of just one. And it would say establish baseline data. And the second one would say, second year established targets. And then there could be a note somewhere to what Bob is saying to make sure that it's reported on. All of these metrics are reported on.
And then we also, perfect. Okay, good. Are there any objections to adopting that comment, those changes? Hearing none, those changes are adopted. Chuck gave the comment that he wanted to leave it the same. This is contradicting, but I don't want to are there any objections to, trying to think of a cleaner way to do it. Are there any objections to adopting the comment to leave it the same?
Yes, I propose the changes, so I object to that comment.
Okay. Okay.
I'm good. I'm good with, yeah, you can delete my comment.
Okay, good to go. Hey, Nancy, next comment.
Yes, on page 18, these are pretty simple. The members, under the subsection members, it just says each of the 6 assembly districts, and in other places in the document, it says municipal assembly and it's capitalized. So I'd like to see that consistency. And then also there's a bulleted item that says both chambers of commerce. And I think it should say the Anchorage and the Chugach Eagle River Chamber of Commerce.
Any objections to those comments? Hearing none, they are adopted. Nancy?
Yes, these are probably my most complicated comments. The tables on page 29 and page 33, the flow charts, I can't follow them. It's neither linear nor a loop. I guess starting with the critique that where it says start of plan development, there's an arrow going into it. And normally when you start, you emanate from that place. So that's my first point of confusion. But in general, I have several. There's in the left side, there's a floating box that says public involvement throughout the planning process. Everything else is tied and that's floating, so that's awkward to me. And then the other dark box that says required of all non-attainment and maintenance areas, that's kind of parenthetical information that doesn't really affect the flow. So in general, this chart, it's really confusing to me. And the same with it's a similar chart on page 33. It has some of the same issues.
So Nancy, is it safe to say that you would just like for these charts to be reworked to make them more clear and easier to understand by the public?
Yes, I did not attempt to do that myself.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say, this sounds like a get into the weeds if we start saying how but just saying these charts are hard to understand. Are there any objection to understand it or to giving the recommendation? SJ, go ahead.
Sorry, not an objection, just another kind of comment on that chart. On both those charts, there's just a grammatical thing. It says the second start of a plan thing says start of an plan update. So that should be a instead of an. And that's also on the second chart on page 33, start of an program amendment. Really minor, but that would point it, just as long as we're throwing it on these charts.
Nope, good eye, SJ. Diana?
Yeah, on the figure 6 there, the boxes are in different colors and it doesn't, give any indication of why, if there was a reason that goes along with the chart that they were using different color. So that kind of adds to my confusion. Is like, why is this one gray and this one blue and this one, clear?
If
Hold on, so
staff
looking.
Yeah, for that I can speak to. The gray is, starting the process. You'd see where it's white. That's just the start of a plan update. So you've not done all the gray boxes. You're starting at that part of the process.
That was just to help you, when you rework it, because it's not clear. So if you just kind of
Label.
made that, made some way of showing your reasoning more evident.
So are there any objections to reworking the two flow charts to make them more clear to the public, the process, and also capturing that the color coding is identified? And the grammatical corrections caught by SJ. Hearing no objections, the comments are adopted. Nancy?
Yeah, the final comment I have, well, two comments actually. On page 68 and 69, the color scheme is, again, it's just hard to read when you have bar charts like that, for me anyway. Among other things, orange red just really pops out and looks as if that's the most important. I don't know what the answer is, but I just find it labeling the bar chart would be a lot easier than having a color scheme that you have to go back and forth with your eyes to and from, especially again with the disparate colors that seem to demand attention. So
Thank you, Nancy. Bob?
Yeah, one other comment on that is that sometimes patterns that could be printed off in black and white will also make a difference. But I agree that if the columns were actually labeled, it would it could allow it to be printed in either black and white or color.
Michael? Or maybe not a hand.
I had nothing.
Okay, are there any objections? So the issue with the contrast in the colors, very sharp, and also labeling the each one of the rows or not rows, each one of the columns. Any objections? Hearing no objections, the comments adopted. Nancy?
Yeah, so this last comment doesn't pertain specifically to this document, so I'm not sure, but it does have to do with public participation. I have found it very hard to look at plan amendments that don't have redlining so that you can actually see what the change is. And I don't know whether, something in the public participation plan would commit to that, or where to lodge this particular complaint, I guess. Yeah, that's, there are numbers that change over pages and pages and pages, and to have to print out an old copy or put a second old copy up on the screen and go back and forth for a member of the public, they're not going to do it. I find it very hard to do myself.
So to staff, is that something that could be included in the public participation plan, is redlining plan changes?
We can probably add that to this plan. I don't know if you've noticed the recent 2050 MTP, but we tried to do better with that one, and that I added amendment 1 in the table of contents so you can see what pages changes have been made. I believe the costs that changed are redlined in that plan, and then we've the project that was taken out with that amendment is redlined. So it is something that we're conscious of and trying to do better with.
Are there any objections to, Aaron?
Yeah, I think this is just a comment, but we do redline when we make changes to things, when we put it out for the public. The problem we're running into is we can't have the final version be redlined. We have to have a final version that is non-redlined. We've gotten a number of complaints recently that people see the redlined versions online and don't think we have a final version or a final approval of it. So we have to balance this pretty carefully. So Nancy, if you're talking about when we put stuff out for the public during the public comment period, yes, we do that. I'm not sure when we haven't, but if we haven't been, we can do that. But the final versions do need to be a clean copy at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. So Nancy, are you holding to that comment for public comment plans being redlined? Are you still moving forward with that comment?
Yes, I would like to see that as established, as the policy is to have
Perfect.
a red line version.
Are there any objections to adopting that comment? Hearing no objections, the comment is adopted. Nancy, did you have any other more comments?
No, that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Nancy, for going through all those. Do we have any other committee members that wish to go through their recommended changes? Hearing none. Christine, did you want, will that suffice for the formal adoption of these comments since as we went, we approved them? Or did you need some type of final approval? Okay, perfect. Moving down, we have 5B, chair and vice chair elections.
Hold on. Before you move on, you need to give the public an opportunity to comment on on this item before you move and
Thank you, Aaron.
finalize.
Perfect. Thank you, Aaron. So moving back, opening it up to the members of the public wishing to comment on the public participation plan. Anne, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I concur with all of the committee's comments. They make a lot of sense. I would add some additional thoughts to the charts and graphs. And I think we should move away from using colors for anyone with any color blindness or anything like that. They're impossible to read. So I would, and it's true over all of AMAS documents. So I think all your charts and graphs should include symbols or shading of some kind, so that anyone with any kind of visual impairment can actually read them. And I concur with the idea of, showing those red line comments. And I know one of the things that's difficult for the public is when we adopt new documents completely. we often, it almost would be nice to have a change log, like what are the significant changes in this document as you move from, one MTP to the next. What, was it a law change? Was it a regulation change? Was it a, FHWA guided change? Those kinds of things help people set the context for what the new plan is talking about. And that's all I had. Thanks for all your work, all.
Thank you, Anne. Do we have any other members of the public wishing to comment? Christine, I'm sliding through here and I'm not, is there anyone else that I'm missing?
No, I
Okay.
don't see anyone online. Just,
Okay.
I will make one comment on the graphs. We will take a look at those recommendations. We do, there's a list of 16 colors that I always use that are supposed to be safe for colorblind, so that they will look a little different. And when we put a lot of things into a filter to see how it will look. So we are conscious of it. We can always take comments to be better if particular members notice that it's not working.
Perfect. Okay, are there any other items for our public participation plan before moving on? Hearing none, we'll move to 5B, chair and vice chair elections. So we need to elect a chair and vice chair of the CAC. So I would say that I'm fine to continue on, but if there's a member that's wishing to, like to step into the chair participation, I fully support that. So whatever the committee, completely open to whatever. I guess all I'm trying to say is I have no hard reservations. If somebody is very interested in chairing this body, feel free to chime in. So with that, unless there's a process, I just go, we'll do chair and then vice chair. Any objections to dealing? So we'll start with, do I need to do nominations? Christine? Okay, so we'll
Yes,
open it
yeah.
up to nominations. So the floor is open for nominations for chair.
Matt, this
Chuck?
is SJ. I'd like to nominate you. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, SJ.
I'll second that. This is-
Perfect. Chuck, you had your hand up.
I was just creating the same thing. Gonna nominate you, Matt, so all good.
Okay.
This is Tor. I called that we close nominations.
Are there any objections to closing nominations? Hearing no objection, I accept the nomination. So it is Christine, with process. We need to now do because there's no other candidates, do we need to do a election, or how does? Let's do it official, or
I think you're nominated, and nobody was opposed to closing nominations. You could say, is anybody opposed to?
yeah, that's kind of what I was
being
thinking too.
elected?
Is there anyone opposed to myself, Matt Cruikshank, being elected as chair for the CAC? Hearing no objections, thank you for the vote of faith. I will continue to try to thank you. Yeah, I will try to be unbiased chairing these as much as possible. So thank you. I appreciate the vote of confidence. So next we have vice chair. So our previous vice chair has moved on to different endeavors. So we do not have a incumbent in the vice chair position. So we'll open up for nominations of vice chair. SJ?
Sure, Matt, it's SJ. I wouldn't mind being your right hand in this if nobody else wants to
Awesome.
step up. So
Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing no other nominations for vice chair, SJ has been nominated. Are there any, SJ, do you accept? I guess you nominated yourself, and I think it goes without saying, but you accept the
sure, I'll
nomination?
accept. Sure, I don't mind.
Perfect. Are there any objections for SJ being elected as vice chair? Hearing no objections, thank you, SJ. Okay,
You're welcome, and
I
maybe
guess we could do a
learn how to
quick
keep my
committee
mouth shut.
comments on that, or public comments on that item.
opening it up to the public. Are there any members of the public wishing to comment on the elections? Diana?
You're muted, Diana.
Sorry. In the event that SJ and Matt are both not able to attend, then what would happen?
We would ask the committee, who would like to chair the meeting. And a vote
Okay,
would take place at that meeting.
Okay, just so we have a backup. I wasn't sure how that would happen. Great.
Perfect. And I think I saw somebody else raise their hand looking through here.
That was
Oh,
SJ.
sorry, that was
raising
me. I
it.
was just about to give that
Oh.
same answer.
Okay, perfect. So are there any members of the public wishing to comment? Not seeing any. Okay, moving on to meeting schedule. So
Yeah. Want me to
staff
just
like to,
brief,
yep,
brief that?
yeah,
Sorry,
yes,
yes.
please.
So when I set out the doodle poll for this meeting, I wasn't sure if I made it clear to set up what works best for the committee moving forward. We would like these meetings to be virtual if possible. They could continue to be at this time slot. They could be, I know BPAC meets at 6:30 to 8:30 in the evening, if that works better for folks after business hours. And then we typically used to meet, I think, 2 to 4:30, but it is up to the committee. If you voted for this time slot, assuming that that would be the time moving forward, we can keep it, but I wanted to put it on the agenda to make sure what worked best for you.
Perfect.
And if people are opposed to virtual meetings, we can have that conversation too. We are just ramping up to being fully staffed at AMATs, and virtual meetings are easier to facilitate. So that's what we started in 2025 when we were understaffed.
So I guess I would make one comment. I do prefer the after business hours, but I also recognize that staff, it is an inconvenience for staff for doing the evening meetings. Fully acknowledge that. So I really did support the late afternoon meetings. I thought it was a good compromise for, it's the end of business hours. I thought that was much more supportive right there, but also recognizing. So I guess I'll make whatever schedule the committee as a whole wishes to support. But I would say I do strongly support the later afternoon or after business hours model. Tor?
Yeah, I would just kind of join that. Even though I do this as an official duty, I am very much not in control of my own schedule. It's subject to a number of different commanders. So after business hours, it's a lot more predictable that I will be able to attend.
I would echo that. Not always in charge of yours. Yes, I can. Thank you, Tor. So I'm scrolling through here looking for for comments. So I SJ?
Thanks, Matt. I guess I am thinking like, definitely during business hours is preferable to me if we're gonna have it on a Tuesday. So, but that's again, do we want to just revisit this through a doodle poll, or is this something we want to decide right now?
Well, I think we had a reoccurring schedule, and that's kind of, I think that's kind of where Christine is going with this, is we get a reoccurring kind of date and time. I think that's what her model was going for right there. And so I think that's why we were trying to have this conversation in an open discussion forum. So if there's any people that have hard, like I do have a lot of hard, I mean, I will make it work, but during business hours is difficult. But I would say I can move to any day. Like if we want to do Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, if Tuesdays doesn't work for a specific after hours thing, I would really support switching it to a different day if we could do later in the afternoon or after business hours. Chuck?
I said, I'll just accommodate whatever the committee decides. I'm good with any time. Make it work in my schedule.
Thank you, Chuck.
This committee has typically met on the fourth Tuesday of the month. So it could be the fourth any other day, just to spread them out with the other committee. It'd be good to keep it that week, but it doesn't, if Tuesday is a hardship, you could consider another day.
What about Wednesday, SJ?
I guess the hard no's for me are just Monday and Wednesday during the day, but I mean, Wednesday after work would be fine. I mean, after 4 p.m., as long as nothing's going horribly in the Sprout world. So, I'm sorry to be wasting everyone's time with this, but yeah.
No, this is important work right here that we can all come to a concurrence, so we can get this reoccurring meeting going. I think that is very helpful. So what I heard is,
All right.
Go ahead, Christine.
Sorry, through the chair, just if it's warranted, I can send out a doodle poll if you'd like to have some more consideration. But if you feel confident doing it now, then we can set up the rest of the meetings.
So maybe that's, it sounds like SJ, Tuesdays are a hard no afternoon, correct?
No. Tuesdays are open for me. Pretty much any day after 11 is fine for me, except for Monday and Wednesday. They're really full days and things go wrong sometimes that preclude me getting away. So, but yeah, any other day except Monday and Wednesday, I'll accommodate the will of the body.
Would there be an objection to do a doodle poll of reoccurring afternoon schedules? Except for Mondays and Wednesdays, because we heard SJ has a hard schedule issue with that. Diana?
I'd prefer not Friday. So
Okay.
Tuesday, Thursday would be good.
And if it's Thursday, it would have to be after hours because those are our policy and TAC meetings.
Okay. Bob said he would generally prefer after business hours. Okay, so we have two specific days that it sounds like, generally speaking, we have support. Christine, you can send if you don't mind, would you send a doodle poll out with those going
Yep.
for mid-afternoon to later?
I can do that.
Perfect. Any other closing comments before, any other comments by committee members before we open it to the public? Aaron, Tuesday, you have to worry about assembly meetings. Yeah, because the assembly starts at what time? 6:30?
5 o'clock.
Thank you. So we'd need to be buttoned up before 5 o'clock. Nope, that's a really good point. Okay. Any members of the public wishing to comment? Hearing no members of the public wishing to comment, we'll move to item 6, project and plan updates. Move to A, transit plan.
Yeah, we have Stephen Stone from People Mover here to give you a short presentation on what's coming up.
Perfect.
Hello.
Stephen, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here with you today, and I am going to give you a very brief, because I know this meeting is dragging, a very brief introduction to our update of our transit plan. We have a current plan that was put in place in 2020. If I can steal the screen sharing, Christine, is that okay? Our current transit plan is called Transit on Move. We are not changing that. It is found on our website at peoplemover.org, and you can access that, the full PDF document. It's 108 pages. It basically gives us a prioritized list of projects that the community was involved in back in 2019 to give us a list of priorities of what we should implement should we get funding and staffing for our services for People Mover, for Anchor Rides, and for our rideshare program. So all of Public Transportation Department, PTD, is involved in this plan. So we have started to update the plan this year. Our timeline for our project, assuming you can see my screen, is we're in the middle of phase 2 and 3 right now. We have started our public involvement process. We're still trying to firm up dates later in the summer for events that we will be like to be attending, whether that's community councils or block parties or fairs or festivals, events that we would like to engage the public in to, for our main purpose is to find a new set of values and goals for our department to prioritize for projects moving into the next 3 to 5 to 7 years or longer for some of them. So we will be at community council meetings. We've already started that. We were at the transportation fair last week. We were out in Chugiak this past weekend at one of their spring and into summer festivals. We'll be at other community events throughout the summer. This public involvement process spans kind of from last week really to the end of September. So our main goal is to be where people are, to not create events that are just transit oriented, but we will meet the public where they're already going to be. If that's at the Juneteenth celebration downtown on the Park Strip, or July 4th, or Disability Pride, or events throughout different communities, different sub-communities of our municipality and the boundary. So we will be at 30-something different events from now until September, and we would love for you to come by and see us at a table or at a different community council event in person. We are trying to interact with you in a very meaningful way, voting on your priorities that were established in the 2020 plan of accessibility, reliability, and convenience. So do we have routes? Do we have service where the need is? Do we need to focus on adding new service as far as accessibility? If it's reliability, that's mostly in the definition of the term. Are we performing how we should or how we want to? Is the bus reliable enough for you to use it wherever you need to go? And Anchor Ride services as well. And for convenience, it's more of a frequency based. When the system was redesigned and the city wanted the public outreach in 2016, 17 voted on a frequency based system, is that still the main goal of what we need to prioritize in the future? So do we need to add more frequency to our current routes? So those are the 3 topics: accessibility, reliability, and convenience, as in our current plan, and what we want the public to weigh in on. So we have a very We have a website, project website. You can access that through, again, peoplemover.org. The main home banner is Transit on the Move. Or you can go to transitonthemove.com. I can leave that in the chat after I get finished speaking with you. But the website really walks you through, has a link to our current plan, what we've been operating off of, and then has specific links to different projects that were either not, have not been implemented yet, or still are priorities for the department moving forward. And then we will adapt and adjust these priorities and projects based off of community feedback. And then what we have done since 2020 is implementing Route 85, transit security, realigned a little bit of Northeast Anchorage, changed a little bit of Route 92 and so on. So I won't go through this step by step because you can read it at your leisure, but the main goal here is to let you know that we're updating the plan and to have you spread the word in your local communities to come find us at our set of events that will be at throughout the summer. That's on the calendar page here on the right side of the website. And then our very short survey that basically asks you the same question. What do you value? Accessibility, reliability, or convenience? And then why did you choose that? Why should we prioritize one of those three over the other, in your opinion? So that is a very quick run through. Sorry if that was very fast. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to take any from you now, or if I need to clarify something that I said too fast in trying to get through this really quickly. I don't see any hands raised. So I will pass it back
Oh,
to.
there's SJ.
Sorry,
SJ's got a comment.
Hi, sorry, just one real quick question for you, Stephen. Thanks for the presentation. I assume just to this body, you were looking to give us, this was more informational. You're not necessarily looking for comment from us at this point, are you?
No, not looking for specific comments from this body, but just awareness of we are updating the plan. It's currently underway, and you have the option to spread this to your local communities and neighborhoods and all that kind of stuff, just to just be aware that we are over the span of the next 4 months going to be at public events to get feedback from the community on what we should prioritize and change.
Perfect. And Stephen, if someone in this committee wanted to reach out, they thought there might be a particular event that would have good participation and benefit, should they just reach out directly to you?
Yes, that would be great. We've tried to find events in the communities in pockets of the city of Anchorage, Eagle River, Chugiak. So we are going to be at some events, and the calendar on the website is not fully updated because it's, again, 30 something different events that we'll be at. But yes, reach out directly to me, and my contact information is on the main homepage of the transitonthemove.com website.
Diana?
Diane.
You're muted, Diana.
Sorry. In the course of normal distribution, would you typically include the FCC for them to pass it on to all the council mailing lists or to the assembly or the mayor's office? I get emails from both of those where I find out about things of interest.
Good question. Yes, I have reached out to the FCC as a board and to all of the presidents or chairs and either secretaries or vice chairs or vice presidents of each community council. And I've heard back from a small number of them. So I have been presenting to them as well and will continue to in May. And we were in the FCC newsletter that came out yesterday that didn't have the correct website link, but it will have the correct website link today when it is updated. But yes.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay. Are there any other committee members that wish to have a comment? I just would say it's 12:43 and we still have one additional presentation. Stephen, thank you for, I know that was a fast and furious. I think that was time. I think you did about 5 minutes. That was pretty impressive.
You're welcome.
Any other, thank you. Not seeing other committee members wishing to comment, we'll move to the public. Are there any members of the public that are wish to comment? Okay. Diana, I think you still have your hand up. Is that correct? Or did you have something else? Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Stephen. And if there's not any objections, we'll move down on the agenda. The next item we have is 6B, Seward to Glen Planning and Environmental Linkage Study. I think we're going to get a update from Galen, a representative from DOT.
Yeah, hi, can everybody hear and see me?
Sure can.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. All right, how's that looking? Is that coming through?
That looks great.
All right. So yeah, thanks a lot for having us today. My name is Galen Jones. I'm with Alaska Department of Transportation. I'm the project manager for the Seward to Glen Connection Pell Study. I'm joined here by a couple representatives from HDR, which is the consultant doing the study for the department, and AMATS, and that is Lori Cummings, the planning lead, and then Rory McAllister, who's with the communications group. So just a quick overview of the presentation, or an outline. I'm going to give an overview of the Pell study and the challenges we're trying to solve. And then I'm going to list or discuss the alternative screening process. And then I'm going to discuss the alternatives that are still under consideration, and then our next steps on the study. So just briefly, about the Pell, or the Planning and Environmental Linkages Study. It plans to identify and evaluate options to improve safety, livability, regional travel between the Seward and Glen highways, and local travel within the surrounding neighborhoods. Currently, the two controlled access freeways are connected through the study area by slower speed arterial roads, and the study will also identify ways to improve access between the Port of Alaska and the highway network. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the challenges we're trying to solve. So one of them is trying to get people to where they need to go. So right now, this is the study area outlined in red, and this first slide is about the National Highway System and its current functions. So we're trying to provide efficient movement of goods and services within the region. The NHS is also trying to connect people to key employment centers, and it supports longer distance, or what I'll refer to as regional trips later in the presentation. It also has state, national, and defense importance or significance, and it has significant vehicle and large truck traffic typically. So what you can see on your screen is 50 to 60,000 vehicles a day coming in off the Glen Highway. So I'll use my cursor here to kind of highlight what I'm talking about. And then you got 40 to 50,000 vehicles a day coming in from the south, from the Seward Highway. Both are pointed at downtown and Fairview. And then we have all these different traffic generators and economic centers in just within the study area. So you have Midtown, downtown, Port of Alaska, the Alaska Railroad, Merrill Field, Joint Base Elmendorf, not to mention the actual neighborhoods where people live and their commercial areas, also within this study area. So a lot of things going on. So on this next slide, we'll talk about freight a little bit. We want to get freight from where it needs to go, or to where it needs to go. So it's starting here at the Port of Alaska, and then it's going through this downtown neighborhood here highlighted in green, and then through the Fairview neighborhood to either get to the Glen Highway or to the Seward Highway to the south. As you can see, it goes right through the middle of the Fairview neighborhood. It sort of bisects the neighborhood along with the current National Highway System on Ingram and Gamble Street, and then on 5th and 6th Avenues. So the freight routes currently, they have impacts to commercial and residential uses. They cause noise. They impact community cohesion with those neighborhoods. They pose safety issues for non-motorized users, and they can also have impacts on economic growth for those neighborhoods and commercial areas. As far as the freight routes themselves, they're not the most efficient routes. There are tight corners, there are plenty of stoplights, and high vehicle volumes on those routes that are not freight related. And so that can affect, price of goods, the efficiency of freight delivery and the like. So also impacts the truck operator safety as well through that neighborhood, or sorry, through those routes. Next slide. I will discuss the how we want to address some major impacts to Fairview that have been going on for quite a while. So the NHS and the freight have been a major burden on Fairview for decades now. I'd say 50 plus years since the couplet was installed back in the early 1960s. So the existing NHS route, the National Highway System, bisects this vulnerable neighborhood. It has heavy, fast-moving traffic and wide streets. It's not very pedestrian friendly. It causes a lot of safety issues, especially for non-motorized users, which there's a high percentage of in the Fairview neighborhood. It poses economic development challenges similar to the freight impacts, and then also community cohesion impacts. So again, showing these traffic volumes that are sort of pointed right at the neighborhood coming in, going through the Ingra Gamble and 5th and 6th Avenue, right through the Fairview neighborhood and downtown. Next slide, I'm going to discuss how the study needs to balance a lot of issues and challenges. And that's been one of the most difficult parts about this study. So we want to improve safety for all users. We want to reduce those travel conflicts between the regional traffic and the local user groups, regional traffic being groups that just want to get to those other major destinations in the areas, and then local user groups that are traveling within the neighborhood, so within Fairview, for example. We want to maintain that National Highway System functionality that I discussed on that first slide, and then improve port access to the National Highway System, improve livability in neighborhoods, spread the burden from the regional traffic, so not just all have it be on that Fairview neighborhood. And then minimizing new impacts to other neighborhoods. We don't want to just push it to other parts of town. So balancing all those issues is quite difficult, and it takes compromise from all the groups. So just wanting to highlight that it's a major goal of the study to, and it's needed by the study to be successful. Compromise is definitely needed for us to be successful. So I'm going to briefly talk about the alternative screening process. So initially we had these draft freeway alternatives that came out in spring 2024. Those were freeways. They were large cross sections, 6 lanes, higher speed. And those we put through we had a public comment period, and we put those through the level 1 screening, which is what we call fatal flaw screening. And it's the first round of screening. And so we look at public input. How does the public feel about it? And we look at right-of-way impacts and relocations for businesses and residences, community impacts and environmental justice, parks and historic properties. So after putting those through the level 1 screening, the freeway alternatives all dropped out. They were eliminated. Then we refined some of those alternatives based on public input to create what were called these parkway alternatives. And they had slower speeds. We used some tunnels to avoid impacts to the neighborhood and to reduce neighborhood and parks impacts. And then we wanted to collect more input on those 3 alternatives. That was alternative A, B, alternative C, and alternative D. So those went through the level 3 screening, and they're advancing into the level 2 screening with refinements that we'll make based on this second round of public input that we just received earlier this year. And then there's the MTP 2050. There's a couple of MTP alternatives, and that's the MTP 2050 alternative. So those are the projects that are included in the MTP 2050 plan. And those are advancing. Those went through level 1 screening and advancing into level 2 screening. There's what we were formerly calling the MTP Plus. We're going to change the name of that. So these all have a similar name, alternative 1 through and so on. And the MTP Plus is basically a refined version of the MTP 2050 alternative. And I'll talk a little bit more about these on a future slide. And those are advancing into the level 2 screening. And then, of course, we have to include the no action as sort of a base condition, and that advances all the way through. But yeah, level 2 screening is occurring right now, and that will consider public feedback, and it'll have traffic modeling. We'll look at project costs more closely and environmental impacts. And then the next step will be coming up with recommendations. So the freeways, as I mentioned, have all been screened out. Those were bigger cross sections, higher speed, larger right of ways, a lot more impacts, minimal landscaping, no sidewalks or bike paths. Those are gone now. And we've advanced, refined some of those into parkway designs that, they have slower speed limits. We're looking 40 miles per hour as opposed to 55. We're looking at, more narrower lanes, less right of way impacts, more at-grade intersections, and include sidewalks or separated multi-use paths along those alignments with more robust landscaping and more narrow right-of-way. This is an example here at Providence Drive. Oop, wrong way. So one of the parkway alternatives that went through level screening has been screened out. That was the Chester Creek Greenbelt alternative. It had tremendous 4F impacts, which are a type of impact to public parks. So that alternative has been screened out. And so we'll no longer be looking at that alternative. But it's important that we look at all of the alternatives. That way, when this gets looked at in the future, nobody says, oh, well, did they look at this alignment? We better look at it. No, we did look at it, and it has been screened out, so it doesn't need to get looked at again.
Galen, can I pause you just for 1 second?
Yeah.
Can I get a motion to extend? I can just tell by it's already 12:55 and we're scheduled to end this meeting at 1 o'clock. Can I get a motion to extend for 5 minutes?
So moved.
This is SJ. So
This
moved.
Tor.
Oh, sorry.
Frank's
Perfect, we got
moved, a
Tor.
second.
Perfect. Are there any objections? Hearing no objections, we're extended to 5 past. Sorry about that, Galen. Go ahead.
No problem. I will try to speed it up as well. All right. So we got this MTP 2050 alternative, and this one's going to stay the same as it advances into the level 2 screening, but it incorporates, it's basically the biggest aspect about this one is it's a 6-lane couplet on the Gamble and Ingra Street. Currently, it's an 8-lane couplet, so it would reduce that cross section down to 6-lane couplet. And then on 5th Avenue, it goes from a 6-lane total cross section down to a 4-lane total cross section. And then the couplet would have a reduced speed from 35 to 30 miles per hour. But another big thing is this one alternative does not have any new connection between the Glen Highway and the Seward Highway. It also includes a WUNRF, or sort of a living street, or a pedestrian priority street on Hyder. And ultimately, the idea is to connect the Chester Creek and Ship Creek greenbelts along this corridor to make a loop around the urban core. And this greenway on Hyder is included in every alternative that I'll discuss. So we had a workshop that asked if the 6-lane couplet that's proposed in the MTP 2050 alternative was the main street that's envisioned by the community. In the Fairview Neighborhood Adopted Plan, a main street is included on Gamble, and then reduced lanes on Ingra Street, and then both would become a two-way street. Or becomes two-way streets. So we had this workshop to say, okay, the MTP 2050 alternative, does that satisfy the needs of the neighborhood and meet the vision of the neighborhood? And it was established that no, it doesn't, that the main streets, which is shown on this bottom row, is more of the long-term vision of the Fairview neighborhood. So this refined alternative, formerly called the MTP Plus alternative, what that does is it tries to see, well, can we reduce the 6-lane couplet proposed in the MTP 2050 down to those main street cross sections on Ingra and Gamble? We would need to get vehicles off of these roadways to make those roadways function and meet the goals of the purpose and need of the study and the goals of the neighborhood. So one idea is to propose solutions like increased transit. Can we have express routes from Eagle River or the Valley or South Anchorage, Midtown, to try to get people out of their vehicles and get trips off the road to increase safety for pedestrians and non-motorized users and increase community cohesion and economic viability in the area. And I can send this slide. I know there's a lot of information on it, but I can send this slideshow, and so you guys can review it later. So just in general, more vehicles on the roadway equals more risk for non-motorized users. So the study is exploring how to meaningfully reduce risk for non-motorized users. Whereas a 6-lane couplet or reducing lanes and speeds can definitely make improvements. We want to see if we can make more improvements to the cross section, to the cross section of the roadway and get more vehicles off the road. So one way to do that is to have these parkway alternatives. Here are some examples. These are all in Anchorage right now. They have landscaping, a couple lanes in each direction, non-motorized facilities, and so on, and slower speeds. So that's parkway alternative AB. This one is going to experience further refinement, but just in general, this one has a tunnel that goes under Ingra Street. That would be a 4-lane tunnel, so 2 lanes in each direction. And then it would go along 3rd Avenue, north of 3rd Avenue, so it wouldn't impact 3rd Avenue, go through another tunnel under South Mountain View, and then tie back into the Glen Highway. And this would this would pull quite a few tens of thousands of vehicles off the roadway every day. And so we're also proposing the Gamble Main Street on Gamble, which is a 2-lane, 2-way road. And then Ingra Street would be proposed as a 3-lane road with a center turn lane. So you're basically taking 2 lanes off of Ingra, 2 lanes off of Gamble, and you're putting those onto some sort of a regional connection between the Glen and Seward highways. So it's just sort of balancing the same amount of lanes in the before and after condition. And this one will experience further refinement for the next round. Similarly, another regional connection alternative, which is a parkway, and it has everything we discussed on Gamble, Hyder, and Ingra in terms of the main streets and the Greenway, except this alignment for the regional connection would go in a tunnel underneath South Fairview and then join into 15th Avenue and then traverse between the regional hospital and Merrill Field and tie back into the Glen Highway. And we're going to further refine this alternative to try to reduce impacts based on public input and reduce cost. And then we have port connections alternatives. We've had a workshop with the Alaska Trucking Association that we got some really good input on these. And so we're going to refine these further. But basically, these ones on the left are if there's no regional connection, there would be some sort of couplet extension from Ingra Gamble that ties into either 1st Avenue, Ship Creek Avenue, or Whitney Road. And then for the diagonal alternative that remains, alternative C, this could be a connection that ties in from Mountain View and Airport Heights intersection up with the Glen Highway, and then traverses up along Whitney Road or 1st Avenue to Ocean Dock Road into the port. And then we're looking at ways to refine these as well. So right now we are, as I mentioned, refining alternatives, and we are working on cost estimating those refinements and working on continued travel trip modeling. So that's kind of like traffic modeling for the regional connection alternatives. We've completed our trip modeling for the non-regional connection alternatives, so the MTP alternatives. And then we're going to do level 2 screening that I discussed in an earlier slide. And then next.
And so as I say, Bob raised his hand, but Bob, if you don't mind holding to the end, just because we're coming down, even if we do extend, let's let Galen get through the rest of the presentation. Go ahead, Galen.
Understood.
Thanks. So basically over the summer, we're going to work on level 2 screening. We're going to, I think a good way to think about this is we're going to come out with a set of alternatives, and each alternative will kind of be a sub area plan. So it'll have a whole list of alternatives, or sorry, a list of projects within that alternative. So it'll be essentially a sub area plan with different projects that are going to be recommended that go with that plan. And we'll identify a phasing order for those projects. So which one should be built first, second, third, and so on. And then in September, we will publish a draft PEL and release these further refinements and basically sub-area plan alternatives to the public for another round of public comment and have an open house. And then in October, we will release the final Pell study. And that is it. Any questions?
Perfect. All right, so we have 2 minutes left. Are there any objections to extending for 5 more minutes? So we go to 1:10, or if we go earlier. Can I get a motion to extend to 1:10?
Move to extend.
SJ? Thank you.
This
Bob?
is SJ. I'll
and-
second.
Okay, are there any objections? Okay, we're not going to extend past this point right here, but I just wanted to make sure we had at least a clean cutoff. Here are no objections. We're extended to 110. Galen, you finished up with your presentation. I know we have, so just so I really don't want to get into a back and forth, but if there's comments or if there's a question or comment that you'd like to bring to Galen right now, now is your opportunity. But please limit it to one time, just so we can have as many committee members ask a question. Bob, I think you had go ahead, Bob.
Okay, thanks. Mine is really a comment, and I could take the answer. I'd like to see it perhaps reflected in the future draft, but my comment is that previous freight studies have shown about 1/3 or more of the truck traffic coming out of the port goes down the AC couplet to the warehouses for cars and Safeway and Fred Meyer and everybody else that are existing along the AC couplet. So I guess I was questioning some of the arrows that were showing all of that freight traffic going down the Seward Highway and the Glen Highway.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, I can respond to that real quick. That is accurate. There is quite a bit of traffic that goes down, even Minnesota, and that those arrows weren't to say that all the traffic goes to the Seward Highway. It was just the traffic that we are discussing in this study.
Perfect. SJ?
Great, thank you, everybody, and through the chair. Galen, thanks for being here. First off, just for the body, I would like to point out, just because I know that there has been a lot of public noise, for lack of a better word, from some of the neighborhoods, that this has not been a very public process. I would like to refute that and just say, having been involved in the MCR Pell and in this Pell since the beginning, Galen and the project team are really responding, over and above what's required. They're responding to public input and public comment. And so just, I for one appreciate that. And I just want to make sure everybody understands these guys are really listening and trying to juggle a lot of different balls. Then I had a question for Galen that is really related to those different balls that you're trying to juggle. You're talking about the next step, weighing options and coming down with some recommendations as well as an order of priority. I'm wondering, on what basis are you considering how many different needs, how many different things are identified in the project needs and scope? How are you going to kind of balance all of those in making recommendations moving forward? I mean, there's cost, there's traffic flow, there's safety, there's connectedness to the neighborhood. So that's my question. I'll leave it there for you, Galen.
Yeah, sure. Just briefly, that'll be determined by the level 2 screening. And we do have a document that outlines that process on the project website. And so that will really show how well each of the alternatives perform against one another and those different criteria.
Perfect. Thank you. Diana?
Actually, this is Dave, so I'm going to hold off until the very end. This would be a public question comment. I'm her husband, David Evans.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, I was very confused there. Okay, thank you. Are there any committee members that are wishing to ask a question or comment? And we are down to 3 minutes, so I would ask you to hold it if possible. Okay, so not seeing any additional questions, comments. We will open it to members of the public. Dave?
Yeah, thank you. Galen, the reduction for the MTP options, the reduction of lanes on Fifth Avenue has always seemed puzzling to me. And I was wondering, is it in your project charter sorry, again, this is David Evans. Is it in your charter to look at maybe not doing lane reductions on Fifth to see what impact that has? I mean, doing the lane reductions, it seems, is going to force traffic through other neighborhoods, for example, Airport Heights and Lake Otis and possibly Braga and Boniface. And so what's the option on your table to look at not doing some of those things like the lane reductions on Fifth?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. That was a great question. So we did observe that exactly how you said. People, when there are lane reductions on Fifth Avenue along Merrill Field, on that portion of the national highway system, it does cause a lot of diversion in the diagonal area south and east of Merrill Field. So on those roadways, you said Airport Heights, Boniface, Braga, over to Northern Lights, Lake Otis, those roadways are seeing a lot of increase in traffic. And we have all that information, at that data, the increase on each roadway. I even have a slide for it, but I'm not going to get into it because I know we're strapped on time. But so we did a sort of a variant of the MTP 2050 alternative that did not take lanes off of Fifth Avenue and that kept lanes off of Fifth Avenue. That kept lanes, the existing cross section of 6 lanes on Fifth Avenue. And what we saw is that reduced the diversion. There was still diversion from reducing lanes on Ingram and Gamble, as you would imagine, but not taking the lanes off of Fifth Avenue reduced that diversion, and it allowed more vehicles to then divert over towards the AC couplet rather than all diverting off and then going diagonal around over to Midtown.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you. So I hate to cut this off. It's 1:09 right now. Galen, that was extremely quick response right there. But I do need to keep this going. With moving that, thank you for making the time to come present. Do we have any, I'm moving to item 7, committee comments. Are there any committee members that wish to have any final comments? And I would ask to make it brief if there are any. Seeing none, are there any members of the public wishing to make final comments? Seeing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
This is Tor. We adjourn.
Thank you, Tor. And I apologize that we had to rush right there at the end. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks.
This is where it's at.